Do you feel like it's a girl's world and you're just living in it, Beau?
Um, well, when as far as my mom and my sister go,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, I would say so. And I would just depend on whether or not, I guess, you're in a dating relationship. I guess if you're kind of focused on your studies and maybe just kind of hang out with your friends, not really. But
Yeah.
when I'm at home, it's pretty much mom's in charge while
Yes,
dad is at work. So yeah, I guess
definitely.
it depends on your situation.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't have to talk about that now, but I just thought I would say it. I think that I
Like
don't
in
know.
this day and age in 2022,
Yeah,
we're all focused. Everything's so female focused, girl power,
yeah.
strong women, all those things. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and just I guess all of our questions too kind of go in with trying to help girls realize that it isn't a girl's world that we're just all living in, and like you like as a guy have just as much like you're not just here to, because we have one of those questions that's like girls are told all the time that boys should just look away.
Hey, welcome to Girl Talk. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes,
I'm Lindsay,
I'm Amy.
and today we have a special guest. This is Beau O'Ferrell, and he and Amy have a long history.
Yes, I started babysitting Beau and Presley when they were 3 and 4. We just did all the math. And I was 12 is my first. Well, I babysat my next door neighbors when I could, walk across the street. But Beau and Presley were the first ones that I was like hired, brought in, had to be driven to their house. And those were my favorite. I lived way out in the country. So I had to either be picked up or taken home. And so car rides were my favorite afterwards. And so we definitely grew up. I was starting middle school, and then Beau and Presley started middle school, started high school. Now they're both in college. So it's super fun to have just gone through all of this. Presley actually was the one going into middle school when we started Girl Talk. I kind of started it with her friends, and then Beau started middle school the next year, and we started a Bible study called 68 Huddle, and that was super fun. We did it for 3 years while Beau was in middle school, and then they all got super cool with all their basketball practices. So they started doing Bible studies at school and all their churches and stuff. So it's been really fun to watch Beau grow up. But he's definitely, I've never met a guy like Beau. And I tell everyone that. I think everyone that knows me knows about Beau, because it's been just a super big privilege to watch him grow up, and just his thoughts and all the conversations that we've had. And just like I look at you Beau sometimes and I'm like, how do you already know this? How do you already think this? And you would ask me questions. Even when you were in middle school, you would ask me questions. I remember one time you asked me what my dream job was, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, I guess ministry or something. And you're like, yeah, you're gonna be a missionary. Like you're gonna, like, I don't know why you would be anything else. Like that's what you're gonna do. And I was like, okay, Beau, thanks. So but then my favorite story to tell about you is we were in the Moe's parking lot at East Chase, and you would not put your seatbelt on. And we sat in the parking lot for like 30 minutes because you would
Yep.
not put your seatbelt on.
I remember that. I was a defiant little kid, I guess.
And all the times we would go to Zaxby's and you wouldn't want chicken, you would just want fried cheese. And I would get so mad because I was like, you have to eat chicken. You can't just eat cheese all the time.
Yeah, I was a picky eater.
Yeah,
Pretty much
That's
so.
what the rest of the world.
definitely. Mexican food and Zaxby's were what we pretty much grew up and lived on, besides steak. And yeah, so
Lots of fun stories.
yes,
Lots
so
of memories.
Beau, where do you go to school with all your Auburn stuff on your wall? And what are you studying? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, obviously go to Auburn. I'm a major is a pre-med. So as I'm trying to stick it out. It's been a lot of time commitment, but that's it's mainly what I'm doing. Go to ACC in Auburn. I'm a part of a fraternity. I'm a KA. What else to say? I mean, other than that, that's pretty much all my time. I gotta be honest. I guess it's kind of boring, but
Yeah, pre-med, that takes a lot.
You chose pre-med over Auburn basketball to be on the team, so that's pretty cool. I mean, that's what I thought.
it wasn't. Well, I kind of realized that playing a college sport and trying to be a doctor doesn't really. There's just not enough time for those two.
Yeah.
Not enough time in the day to get all
and
done well.
I appreciate the praise, Amy, but Auburn was not the choice to go play basketball. I wish it was, but
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they've seen you play basketball if they didn't choose you.
I guess you're right. We'll go with that. We'll go with that
I
one.
mean, I used to be able to beat you in all of our driveway basketball games, but
You did. You
that
used
didn't
to
really work
win.
out the last couple of years.
So, well, thank you for joining us today. And so what we're talking about is just life of we're talking with you, Beau, because Amy has I know she's prayed for you. As the minute she met you, she was praying for you, and the Lord has definitely answered a lot, probably all of her prayers, just as we've seen you, or as Amy has seen you, and you growing up and your choices through high school and your walk with the Lord. And every way she has described you to me has just been a young man after God's heart and seeking his kingdom first and his righteousness. And, so that's why we wanted to talk to you today, because we are talking to girls most all the time. I mean, this is girl talk. So, but we wanted to be able to give girls a guy's perspective on girls and living around a lot of girls in 2022 and what that is like, life in a guy's mind, through a guy's eyes, and especially life from a guy who is trying to follow the Lord and please the Lord with his heart and mind and eyes and his choices. So thank you again for having the courage to sit down and share your thoughts with us. So I guess we'll just jump on in. We've always, as girls, we talk about marriage. We have the dream when we're from the time that we're little and we see our mommy and daddy and the husband and wife relationship. Girls dream about getting married, because who's the first person that you want to marry? Your dad. Yeah. So we have that dream in our hearts, and it's put there, it's a godly hope and dream. And we have so many pictures of what that looks like.
Even as girls, we look at Pinterest and we look at our parents, if they have a marriage that, there are so many of us that don't grow up seeing marriages in our homes. And so we unfortunately see them on TV, and the culture has gotten to where I was telling Matt and Abby the other day that Netflix, when I was their age, I don't even know if it was their age, when I was Libby and Emmy's age, Netflix was the DVD that you got in the mail and you had to wait for it. And
Yes.
now you can watch everything, and there's just so much access to what love is. But really, we, like you were saying, we were born with eternity set in our hearts and in our minds. And we were born with the desire and the craving for Christ and just like Christ in his bride with the church, all of that is wrapped up in our relationship with God and a relationship with Jesus. And so really, as Christians, and I guess just as everyone, but as Christians, no matter our age, our choices set up our marriage. And Beau, I know that we've talked about that our whole lives. Just, what you're doing now is going to affect your marriage, and the picture perfect marriage that we see, with Pinterest engagement pictures and everything that we see on Instagram now. It's such a big deal to have the perfect pictures and your viral wedding videos and just all the things that but marriage is the dream, that marriage is what we dream about, that lasts forever, because the wedding and the pictures and all the fun of the wedding go away. But marriage is really what our hearts desire.
And what happens the day after the wedding. That is marriage, not just the wedding and not just pictures, but what happens after.
Libby was reading a book a couple months ago, and it was the girl got to the honeymoon, and the guy just wanted to go back home and start working. He was
because she wasn't, because what happened before her life, before her wedding, did not prepare her for marriage. It actually broke her before marriage. So she was broken before she even got married, which is why we're talking about what we're talking about today. So this is a cool statistic. According to gotquestions.org, I'm just going to read it. In January 2022, Shanti Feldon, the Harvard-trained social researcher and author, states in her book, The Good News About Marriage, that the 50% figure was not based on hard data, but rather the number came from projection of what researchers thought the divorce rate would become after states passed the no-fault divorce laws. But we've never hit those numbers. We've never gotten close. So according to her study, the overall divorce rate is only around 33%. So that's a lot better.
Yes.
than what we hear.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of, I just kind of typed up that one little paragraph of what we were studying, but it's really, it is good news that it's not as high as everyone says. You're not doomed to get divorced if you get married, which is, I think, really one reason why we're doing this interview and why we want to talk about this is because actually statistics show that marriages are either not happening or they're happening way later in life because of all the stigma of like, well, you're going to get divorced anyway, so you might as well not get married, or you need to go figure out your own life and go get your own stuff and do all of this. And that's really, if you read the Bible, like that's not the way that I was reading about Queen Elizabeth all day yesterday, obviously, like all of us. And she met Prince Philip when she was 8 years old. They started writing letters when she was 11, and they were madly in love by the time she was like 13.
Which I tell my girls that all the time. Like Mary had Jesus when she was 14. So the culture we live in today has been built in such a way that it is so hard to remain pure until marriage, because we were designed to start families when we're 13 and 14 years old. Girls are ready. Yeah. You know, like they're already looking like, so we've decided we're going to start talking to 4th and 5th graders before they're hit with all the and waking up to this.
I mean, y'all are ready for it too. It's just the way our that's the way we were created, and
our bodies were created.
Honestly, if you look at culture, they know it too, because they are feasting on that. But they're trying, which is what we're about to go into. Like, so it's 33% of marriages end in divorce, but like, why is it not 0? Like the Bible says that what God puts together, let no man separate. And so why, as Christians, as you know, if we are following Christ and we have him in our lives, like why do Christian marriages still end in divorce? Because they do. Like we've all been impacted by Christian marriages that have ended in divorce. Yeah.
The enemy is distracting us from the most important thing, because like we said, our culture has moved us into starting with when women's suffrage and the right to vote. That was the beginning of equal rights for women, which is a good thing. Like, I'm not saying all this stuff was a bad thing, but all these opportunities for women to grow and get this degree and start this and start that, the enemy is using it. What is a good thing, but the enemy is using it to empower and create pride in women, thinking that being a mom and a wife is not good enough. And so a lot of women, while yes, it's good to have their degree and be educated and use those gifts and talents at a certain point in their life, they're saying, well, I can't get married yet, or I can't have kids yet because I've got to use my degree that I paid so much money for. So I'm going to work, and I've got to work. So I need to put my kids in daycare, or I don't need to have kids, or whatever. And so at the end of the day, it's a lot of the children that are suffering. And that's a strong statement. And a lot of people are going to have a lot of flack about that. And there's a lot more to unpack with that. So I don't want to make the blanket statement, but that is there in some places. Okay. So if you want to have a conversation about that, whoever is listening to this, don't just throw hate on me. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So
we have lots of evidence and insight and
scripture. So that's a whole nother rabbit trail. But the main point is there's so much scripture that tells us that the most important thing is love in each other and marriage and family.
So Psalm 51:10 says, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. So whenever we, take that into all things of our lives, and then blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God, Matthew 5:8. Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, and cling to what is good. Romans 12:9. And so the enemy is deceiving us, distracting us, defeating us, disappointing us. He's using all those D words against everything that God has said. Like God has said that when we're pure in heart, we're going to see him. Like he promises us all these things, but the enemy continues to bring out all of the distractions that get us away from trusting that love is good, like cling to what is good and like flee from what is evil. And all of these things that we really end up pursuing in a relationship with another guy, or guys end up pursuing in girls. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where relationships have gotten so broken down because we're all just looking for what's going to fill us, and we're not sticking to what God has promised us when we seek him first. But above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. And that's really like in all of our choices, like we said, like in all of our choices, all of our things, like we are to guard our heart when we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. He guards our heart, and his love for us guards our heart. And that was one thing I struggled with growing up, because I am such a perfectionist, and I know Beau, you are too. Like we are perfectionists and we strive. Like you're an Enneagram 1 and I'm a wing 1, so we both have that, like you got to do it right the first time and you don't really get any other second chances. And so it was always for me just striving to, oh, got to make sure that I'm guarding my heart and I'm doing what I need to do. And I was running myself so just
frazzled.
Yeah, all the time, because I was like, I'm not
Worn
doing
out.
enough. My heart is gonna get hurt because I'm not guarding it enough. And really, God promises us, like when we seek him, like he does all of that for us when he's first in our lives. And so like what God really does desire for our relationships is Song of Songs 8:4 says, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. And then Hebrews 13:4, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all of the sexual immoral. And so if marriage is to be honored by all in all stages and all ages, in order for the marriage bed to stay pure, do our choices honor marriage at all times? Because ultimately marriage is to reflect Jesus's relationship with his bride. So that's all of it. This is the setup to our choices all throughout the Bible. Just show that our choices now set up everything that happens after this in marriage and life and everything.
Right. So Ephesians 5:21 through 33 is a whole lot, but I'm just going to say that first verse. It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so I think that really is where we want to start our questions with you, Beau, because just like we talked about a second ago, do you feel like this is a girl's world or a boy's world? But you're like, well, it depends. So what we're asking is more of like, who is the culture trying to make happy? I think is, or empower or something like that. But the Bible says for each of us to submit to one another. And so that's why we want to hear you today, because we want to know from a guy's perspective, how could girls submit to boys? Not in a bad way, not in an abusive way, not in a doormat way, but to honor their brothers in Christ around them. We want to hear from you now, how we can do that. So first question is, what are you focused on right now? But you just told us you're pre-med.
Yes.
And so you're finishing school and you've got your social life and
trying to balance that all.
I like to call them anchors in my day. Like, what are the majors in your day that don't change?
I guess so. I do my quiet time at night, just to kind of just go into that. So in the morning, I find it's hard for me to wake up and then focus on the word. So like in the morning, I think it's important when you first wake up to have some sort of talking with the Lord, because that's the first. You want to give him the first, obviously, like we all know. But I do my reading at night, and then in the morning, just give him the first thing. I wake up and I pick a verse, just so like he's my beginning and my end. He's my alpha omega. So the last thing I say before I go to bed, and the first thing I see when I wake up is the Bible, is a verse. And then I'll just maybe listen to worship music on the way to breakfast or something. And then I guess from there um it's obviously it's a lot of schoolwork. And just trying not to procrastinate it really, because if you have a lot of schoolwork, you're not if you're not ahead, you're behind. So it's that type thing. And just kind of always throughout the day, just taking time to stop and take a breath, maybe read a couple verses, or because sometimes during the day, like I'll be like, I like to meditate on what I read the night before. And so I just like to maybe go back through the headings of the chapter that I read and just kind of let those ruminate in my mind just as I go throughout the day. Just doing that as I see so fit.
That's great. It's great.
Yeah.
So encouraging, refreshing to hear that.
I think that it's important for girls to know that, because I do think that girls live in such a selfish world that they think it's all about them. And that's why I asked that question earlier. If you feel like you're living in a girl's world, because I think girls think that they're living in their own world and everyone else around them just has to do whatever they think needs to be done. And so I think it's really important. One reason why, like, I do want your voice in all of this is because you are someone that, I mean, I know just being in the girl world, like, you are someone who girls look up to and they look at, and you know that, and you're very aware of that, and you stay very humble in that. But I think it's really important for girls to know that nothing that you just said that you're focused on has anything to do with girls. And anytime that we talk, like, you're like, yeah, I got this, this, and this. And like, yes, I'm praying for my wife. And like, yes, I'm praying for the right time. But like, you're not walking around looking at girls and thinking about them, and girls are walking around thinking about themselves and what boys are thinking about when they're looking at them. And I just think it's a good perspective just for girls to hear that, like, there are other things in the world besides them and what guys think about them. Because I mean, we know girls that are not focused on just what guys think, but for the majority, I feel like it's just a really good, just that's one reason we asked that question, because like, I think girls need to know that it's not all about them all the time,
Right. But they are thinking about, because so many girls think about the future. I mean, we're all thinking about the future. And also, girls aren't wired. A lot of girls are not wired to have a career, but they're expected to.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing. I remember when I was in high school, everybody was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to have some kids and be Aunt Debbie,
Yes.
My Aunt Debbie, I just love her so much. She was always the sweetest thing, and she played with me when I was little, and I just wanted to be Aunt Debbie when I grew up.
Yeah.
And but my dad was like, no, you have to go to college. You have to do something. You should be a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor. I mean, he just named all the careers. It was like, pick one. I was like, no. And so a lot of girls, that scares them. A lot of girls are wired, and they know, and they are driven. They have that leadership quality, and that is great. And they are doing great things. But there are a lot of girls that are just walking around going, who's going to marry me?
Yeah.
I just want to be a mom, because they just have that desire to nurture.
Not in a selfish way. That's not.
No, I mean,
we're
I think
just wired different as girls than boys are.
So to hear you talking about, you are focused on your school and being a provider. I mean, you're definitely going to have a career that helps others, but you also probably have hopes of marriage and something like that. Can you tell us about your hope and desire and what that kind of looks like to you?
Just to kind of go off of kind of what y'all said, like when girls think about like maybe like, when am I going to get married, or who's going to marry me, guys are thinking like I gotta get a job, like how am I supposed to like buy a ring, or how am I supposed to support this girl if I don't study right now for me to get a job? And so that's just the way that just wired differently.
That's good.
So,
That's okay.
So girls kind of have like a chronological timeline, and guys have like a really like a financial timeline, I
I
guess.
was about to say that.
Yeah.
But anyway, more toward your question is that obviously I'm focusing on school, and because I want to provide. I personally don't want my wife to work. But I mean that's just my opinion or my kind of my want. Um, so focusing on school and also focusing on me and Amy, we talked about this recently that the how do I put this? That we're so focused on who are we gonna marry and like analyzing like what this girl do I like this girl compared to this girl and this, that, and the other. But when you focus on yourself and be the person that you would kind of be attracted to, or be that person that you would want to be around, then the Lord will, it won't be any pressure. The Lord will put that person in your life. So if you just focus on yourself and trust the Lord with the timing, then it'll all work out. I know Amy has told me that more than once.
Well, that is true. I mean, that's Matthew 6:33 right there, because you just focus on him and his righteousness and his kingdom. He's going to provide everything else, because Ecclesiastes says it's not good for a man to be alone, man or woman. He made Adam and Eve. So he will give us the right thing at the right time when we just seek him in all things. So it's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. So what is your view specific? Like, what is your view and your hope for marriage?
My view slash hope would really be what we just read is that Ephesians, those verses from Ephesians 5, I view it as the most important thing to God was obviously our relationship to us. And for him to compare, he could compare anything in the world to our relationship with me and him, but he compares marriage. So that shows you how important marriage is, and really how important it is to follow this, I guess, not format, but way of thinking about marriage. So when I'm so when I look in my mind what I want it to be or what I hope for it to be, it would really be just dying to yourself so that the other one could live. And kind of more to that point is that, of course, we are Jesus' bride. So, and we're getting married to him to one day. And all of the verses say you got to die to yourself. But I mean, Jesus, I heard this in a sermon at Church of Highlands, but somebody's got to die first. Jesus died first to us. So as the man, it's you got to get some guts and first die to yourself and kind of put yourself out there to that girl. And then that's how the marriage is kind of started. And as a leader, that's what you got to do.
That's right. Love gives. We've always heard 1 Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind. And a lot of times that doesn't really take on meaning until you're old enough, or unless somebody is like telling you every day, but that doesn't really take on meaning until you have the cognitive ability to understand, oh, when I treat somebody kindly, I'm showing them love. But then I also heard a few years ago, love gives. Like, God gave his one and only son. God is love, and God gave Jesus so that we could be forgiven and have our sins paid for. So yes, you're right. You just got to die to yourself every day, because to show someone else love, you might have to sacrifice what you want in that moment to be kind if you're not wanting what they want. So, or to be patient or something. So yeah. So as you are praying about things in your life, and we know you're focused on your studies right now, but what are the qualities of a girl that you would want to get to know, that you would consider that would be good for a wife? I mean, how do you say that in a nice way?
What are you looking for in a girlfriend and your future wife?
Yes.
You don't date someone you wouldn't marry.
Exactly. It's exactly true.
So as you, I guess, I don't know, from your point of view, when you are just around people, getting to know people in your class or at a party or anything like that, in some kind of group setting, what are the qualities that you look for that make you kind of do a double take or think a little bit more about that person or something like that?
I guess there's a lot of qualities, but one really telling quality for me is that it tells a lot of different things about that girl is that so is if they gossip about someone or talk down about someone, that means that what I take from it is that they have a lack of confidence, therefore a lack of their identity in Christ. Therefore, they're going to have a lack of identity in Christ in their marriage. Therefore, they're going to look to you for their identity. And therefore, everything you do is going to be under a microscope. Every little move you make is going to determine how they live their life, what their mood is. So
Wow.
just if you're talking bad about someone or like you feel the need to gossip or this, that, and the other, talk down to someone like that, for me, that clicks in my mind to that lack of self-confidence and lack of identity leads to a lot of different things. So that's one big telling thing for me.
That is really good. That, I don't think I've ever really thought about that in that way. I mean, it's true, but as far as really breaking it down for um a future spouse quality, that's really good. Very informative.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the most unattractive thing. Is there something that kind of stands out that if you see, like, that's one side, that's your con, is there something that you would see in somebody that would make you think you want to get to know them a little bit more? Or did they kind of have to not do all these other things before you get to that next step?
Well, yeah, I guess not doing kind of what I just said helps a lot. But I guess something that you could that doing something would be I feel like a great listener says a lot. That may just be me just because like I'm not a big talker. I'm just kind of like a more of a chill, like laid back guy. Like I don't know how really how to you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But like,
some of
if
his personality, yeah.
yeah, that's probably just more of like a personality thing just for me. But I guess just kind of just being a great listener and being intentional because a lot of just the way that like society is, especially for girls, you always got to put on like this. You always got to be quote unquote genuine and nice to everyone. But for me, I can really see the difference between someone's being genuine and someone who is where their feet are and listening to you and actually interested in the conversation, or they're just trying to be nice just because they don't want to look bad. So I guess as far as something that I look for that somebody would do is that, like I said, just a great listener and just being genuine in the conversation.
Yeah, that is definitely a good telltale sign, because we are raised to to just kind of be like, hey, what's going on? How are you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then, like you said, just work the room.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to work the room. And so there definitely comes a time that you've got to find the person who's not just working the room, but is present where they are. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. Someone who talks a lot is usually making stuff up, like not making stuff up, but I'm trying to think, what's that? If there's like a saying or something that just says, I don't know. I'll cut it
Saying
out.
less makes your words mean more.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like the less you talk, the more people are going to listen when you actually do try and talk, which is what I mean. You're that way, Beau, and I feel like I'm that way. Like I'm not just going to walk in and just start talking to everybody. And I mean, not that that's a bad thing, but what you're saying is that girls that do show up and just try and put on a front and try and start talking. Usually it's in that situation where you do start pulling stuff out about other people, because you're starting to just fill words and have empty thoughts and have empty sentences. And so it's interesting that your pro and con kind of go together, and it's like you can't have one or the other. Like you have to be so secure in Christ that you can be okay with not just filling up space with your words and talking about nothing, and you can sit and listen to someone else talk, or
ask questions to draw out their heart and their who they are.
And that comes definitely with your identity in Christ, which is what we talked about earlier, of how really like this time before marriage is not to go find out the best person you can find to get married to, but it's this time before marriage is becoming the best that you can be, so that you are the best husband to your wife, or for girls, like, so that we are the best wife to our husband. And just like you said, like the more we seek that out in Christ, the more like it comes together, and your lawn man shows up in your front yard, just it all works together when you're just seeking Christ and doing what he's calling you to do. And then it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So with all that, how do you view yourself in a relationship to a girl that you are getting to know? You just talked about dying to yourself in relationships and things like that. But at the same time, what is your role? Because we all have a role in every stage of our life. Okay. Whether you're studying or you're about to finish school at that point. And so you have been praying for the right girl, and just for the Lord to order your steps and bring the right person at the right time that you are equally yoked with, because personality and heart's desires and all those things and the purposes, God's plan for you in his kingdom, there's all that for all of us. So when you finally get to the point, I say finally, I mean, but we're asking you this now. So that it could be two different things. It could change. What is your role at that point as you're getting to know her?
As a kind of just, I guess you would call that like, you kind of like talking stage, or trying to get to know a person where you're not really committed. You're just kind of like kind of just, what's the word, like deciding, or like you have interests, but you're just not fully ready to commit yet, I guess. For the guy, obviously, I believe that the guy should obviously pursue the girl. I fully believe that, just because, just like, of course, relating it back to our relationship with the Lord, like Jesus pursued us first, like he put himself out there first for his bride. I know we're not talking about marriage, but it's kind of the same deal, with just kind of like dating and getting to know girls. So yeah, that would be the main thing. And also be intentional with your intentions. Because if you're just getting to know a girl, sadly, like that girl is, if she's smart, she's trained to think like, well, is this just like every other guy that's just probably just trying to hook up with me, then not ever talk to me again? Or is he actually trying to get to know me? And this could be something, whether it works out or whether it doesn't. I mean, it could, it cannot. But as far as just the guy, just making your intentions clear, being intentional, and be the one to, step out first.
Yeah. Side note, can I ask you, what are your thoughts? Because we talk about this all the time. Would you, okay, and this is like the $1 million question. Would you text a girl and ask her out, or call her and ask her out?
Yes.
Ooh. Is this like,
or ask her in person,
or ask her in person,
you're going to run into her again somewhere.
Or make sure you do run into her so that you can't ask her in person.
Yeah.
So the situation is, this is the first time we're asking a girl out.
Yeah, it's like you've gotten to know her, you've been around her for a while, and you're like, I think I want to take her out to dinner, get to know her a little bit better, because I'm kind of feeling like this, there could be some potential here. How would you ask her out?
if it's the first one, I gotta be honest, I would text her. I would. I'll be honest. Because
No.
if it's the first one,
No.
if it's the first one,
Are you just thinking about like hanging out, or are you like you would literally text her and say, I want to take you to dinner?
yeah, I'll do that. Because if it's the first one, then I don't know what she's feeling. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I don't really know if she's ready to because just kind of like talking over the phone and
Mhm.
and like maybe kind of going to a date party or whatnot. I guess it's more of a college thing, but like that doesn't really show any commitment at all.
Yeah.
But as soon as let's say for example, if one of my roommates took a girl out, like trying to get to know her, like took her out to dinner, like paid for her dinner,
Mhm.
like I'm not gonna pursue that girl. Like, you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
would view that as like until that ends, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
like
I could.
going out in public and like going out, you're going out on a date. I believe that's a whole nother level of commitment. So I would not want to put a girl on the spot, asking her on the phone or in person.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that if you think about it that way, I mean, he's thinking about how she is feeling and going to not really respond to him, but just, asking her in a college setting when it is. I mean, I know you know how I feel and what we feel, and like I know at my age, like it's different, but I see where you're coming from, Bo, just on how it is a really big step to take a girl to dinner like in college because you have so many other opportunities, but asking them like on an official date and then not wanting. I mean, Bo's not going to want to put a girl into an awkward situation.
Well, I
So he's
understand, but
thinking about her
also
feelings.
if you think about life before texting, how would a guy have had to ask out a girl?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Either
I just respond to the text and say, yeah, if you can call me and ask me that. Like,
So I don't know. We're just, we've had these conversations because yes, the way you just explained it, you're thinking of the girl and don't want to put her in a hard spot. But from a girl's perspective, sometimes we're like, why can't he call me and ask me? Where does he not have the courage to call and ask me?
mm-hmm.
So do you
Yeah.
see? I mean, there are definitely both sides, which is
Yeah.
why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
and we did like
And there's also a little bit of romanticism in that. Like a
yes.
girl wants, and again, this puts a lot of pressure on the guy, but at the same time, for a young man who is living above reproach and wants to do hard things because that's what God calls us to, the girl wants the guy to call her and ask her out,
Mhm.
mhm.
It's true.
Because and we did that poll, didn't
Yeah.
we? Yeah, we did a poll last year and we gave a couple of options about calling and
Yeah. Planning the date before or
texting and all
asking like,
that.
hey, you want to go to dinner? Okay, where do you want to go? Or just, I mean, we kind of had all responses, but
But mostly it was the fact that they wanted a
it
guy
was
to
like,
call.
hey, I have reservations at 7. We're going to dinner. I'm picking you up.
Which yeah, because most every girl wants that strong guy to come in and sweep her off her feet.
And the intentional, I mean, you're saying it, you're just,
Mhm.
the intentionality of you've thought it through and it's not just like, hey, you want to go to dinner? You
But
want to
then
go to
some of that is
Chick-fil-A?
personality too. Yeah.
Yes.
Like some guys are more apt to plan the dinner and go out.
Yeah.
And then some guys are more like, well, where do you want to go? What would make you
Yes.
happy? You kind of alluded to this a minute ago when you were talking about just how things are more casual these days with dating and things. So because even in Christian circles, we hear, well, you don't have to marry her, just go have a good time and stuff like that. So when it comes to the pressure of asking out and going on dates, but there's that little bit of it's just casual. It's not going to be a big deal until how do some people view all those casual things in relation to how they will affect their marriage? Like nobody ever talks about the future or what the implications are on certain actions, you know, when it's just, well, you're not going to marry her.
I mean, because college is lots of strings of casual dates, date parties. Like you're with girls, you're taking girls out, you're asking girls out, like not on a dinner date, but just you're constantly in that, which is what you're kind of saying, is that it makes going to dinner a really big deal because there's so many other things. And so I guess and we have some questions about this later that I'm very interested in asking you, but she needs to respect you in your future, whether or not it's with her or not. Like if you're going to marry her or not, like she needs to respect you, just like you need to respect her. And the way that I've kind of come to know it is you want the girl, whether you're in a relationship or not, like you want every girl that you come in contact with to be better for marriage because of you, like whether they marry you or not. And so do you ever consider that like your future or their future with just every interaction that you have, or is that just like a really big thought? Like what's your thoughts?
The pie in the sky as we live life.
I would, as far as like from day to day, I guess maybe I should, but I don't really think about how this could affect as how this girl views marriage and how it views what her husband should be. But I view it as like, obviously I want to treat the girl with respect and that I am intentional with her because she deserves that. And so, and I guess that would eventually lead to marriage, because if this girl is so used to, just a practical example in college, like if I ask a girl to a date party and it's at the house, fraternity house, and I maybe just kind of just randomly ask her maybe at a 12:30 a.m. and don't let her know the plans of what we're doing before and what time we're going to the house until like late that day, and like she doesn't know what our plan is, like I don't go to pick her up, like I don't communicate with that with her, then she just is going to think that really just guys, or maybe that it's not normal for a guy should plan ahead, let her know what time I'm picking you up and what time we're going to go. Ask her in advance with a well thought out, and ask her if she needs anything, like make sure she gets home, like all these things. Then how is she going to expect that that's what her husband should do? So that's my thought process of it.
That's good. Yeah, because if you think about, like, I had friends that dated trash guys all the way through high school, all the way through college, and who do they marry? And what's going to happen? Yeah, like, and it's like you tell them, but that's what guys, I don't know if it was guys that they were just attracted to, they were used to, but what you're saying is the more you treat a girl like that or like allow that to happen, the more they're just going to be used to it and not expect what they deserve. And not expect, and then that's just the whole cycle. I mean, that's why we're talking about all of this, because girls shouldn't expect it, guys shouldn't do it, but guys get to do it because girls expect it. And it's just, no one is called to the higher standard that we live by and that we're called to live by, because no one's standing up and saying, like, no, this isn't right. Like you, and some people, and then that's the whole thing with like, oh, you're not going to marry her. I mean, I've had so many people that have told me, like, just go out with him, like you're not going to marry him, it's fine, like it doesn't matter. And I'm like, but it does matter, like it really, all of it matters, and it matters for me, it matters for him, like it matters for everyone around us, like it all matters. And that is like a definitely, like I have grown up in it, is no one else thinks that, like it feels like no one else, and everyone's like, you're being way too serious, it doesn't, like this isn't, but it really is. Like we are called to such a high standard as Christians, and we really are setting up, like we have the potential to have a 100% successful marriage, right? Like we have the potential as Christians, we have the power in us to follow out the commitment that we are called to live in marriage, and just being okay with whatever is allowing that 100% marriage rate to not be there.
It's laziness and apathy. Those are the things that are bringing us down in our culture.
Yeah.
So,
and not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings. Yeah. So
yeah, girls aren't holding it.
This is good. I was here for this.
Okay. So my oldest is 20 And then I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 10 and a 9-year-old.
They're all
The
about
oldest,
to turn.
yeah, they're all about to have a birthday. Except my 20-year-old. He just had his birthday. So
Kind of.
yeah, in May. So I see my older girls and now and what I've gone through with them. And so I think that has equipped me to talk to my younger girls before it starts with them. And it's, taking on a preventative role instead of reacting to what's happening, which maybe with my older ones, I did more so because I just didn't know a lot of things. So all that to say is I have started talking to my younger ones. My 10-year-old, she's about to be 11. Yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to think if she had already turned or if she was already 11 or not.
We're not there.
But I asked her probably a few months ago, do you notice any boys around you? Like, what do you think about the boys around you? And she just kind of looked at me and I said, do you think there are any cute boys around you? And she just kind of started grinning and nodded her head. And I thought, yep, here we go. Because again, I think it's happening earlier with the Disney generation, but what is it, like sixth grade? I think it was sixth grade when I really noticed a cute boy. It wasn't until it might have been fifth grade, probably sixth grade, I think was my biggest first crush. So I'm saying all that to ask you, when did you start noticing girls and that they were cute and not just there to throw frogs at or whatever boys do?
You like kindergarten, probably.
I was about to say,
Really?
I definitely had a kindergarten crush.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had like a girlfriend in kindergarten. Like, I'm pretty sure I did. But I mean, like, seriously, like, maybe it would either probably be right before middle school, maybe like sixth grade.
I think it was fifth grade.
Fourth grade, actually.
Fourth grade. I was gonna give you a year, but I
Yeah, if we're talking about, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
So, so you had thoughts then, and of course, as you've grown and matured, they've changed. What did you have any direction in your thoughts and your feelings, all that kind of stuff, as far as just any direction on how to handle them, what to think about your thoughts and emotions? And because there's so many things happening as we grow for girls and guys, and just growing and hormones and all those things.
It is obviously grown a lot. I feel like it's more of like it's not so much like a gradual thing, but it's like a kind of like in middle school, it's like, oh, I think you're attractive. Like, it'd be like, let's date. I mean, you really can't date in middle school. I mean, you can't really drive. But I mean, like, and then getting to high school, like, I want to spend extended time with this girl. Like, I could possibly marry this girl. And then, but it's not really that added pressure of college, because college is like, I mean, you realize it's a whole nother step of like these next 4 years, I'm going to be around probably the most girls I've ever been in my life. So like, obviously don't put a timeline on what the Lord has for you, but practically, like, most people get married in college, which, I mean, I'm not saying that is the Lord's plan for everyone, which it's definitely not. But you just kind of start to think that I'm kind of sort of getting to that age and whatnot. So you really start to kind of think about it. And that's when it's hard to not kind of go after it rather than let the Lord work it out and come to you. So yeah, that was kind of like the stages of at least my process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was thinking I mean, we grew up very surrounded by it. And I think that was a thing. Like, I think if you're not just surrounded by girls and guys that are liking each other and parents that are kind of, they're so cute
facilitating
and
all of it.
Yeah. And so, because I remember when I was in kindergarten, like, I had a little boy that I thought was cute, and I mean, we ended up being best friends in high school, and he always asked me for my homework and all that stuff. But like, but I think and like, that's what you're saying. And we are so culturally surrounded by it at all times now that it's almost, that's why we're talking about all of this, because it's here, we're in the middle of it. And so we want to be that direction that the 9 and 10-year-olds can have, because they're thinking about it, they're seeing it, it's part of,
they're getting all their information
the
from
the squeals that we hear while we're watching. I mean, even just like Parent Trap and the things that we've grown up now, and then hearing Maddie and Abby like squealing whenever the parents get together at the end, and just the excitement that they get. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, it's a whole new ball game. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So what was the hardest thing growing up in our culture of guys and girls and boyfriend, girlfriend? What was the hardest thing about being a 7th, 8th, or 9th grader or 10th grader, that you were around all the girls and you were dating and all those things, but you knew you weren't going to get married anytime soon? Was there anything that you were constantly fighting, either in yourself or around you, or anything like that?
Obviously, like I kind of said, once you get into a teenager, high school, like that's where it kind of kicks up another notch from just kind of obviously being younger. And that comes with a lot more temptations, that comes with changes to a lot of different things. And so it's a lot more temptation. And obviously things on your phone is a lot more temptation, but it's kind of like it's all in your face. Like, it's all in your face, but marriage is not in your face, that type deal. So it's like, oh, marriage, yeah, it's forever away, but all but everything's kind of coming on right now. You know what I'm saying? So you don't really connect the two in your mind. So that's kind of like, I hate to say the danger zone, but I mean it is. It's
Well,
very, very shaping. Um um One thing that I wish that I kind of knew or understood is that like in and of himself, like those desires, those things that are all new, it's a good thing. Like it's supposed to happen. Like, because if we just try to white knuckle our way, just to, like, all you hear is just, don't do this, don't watch this, don't do this, X, Y, and Z, then you can't just white knuckle that for however many years. Like that just doesn't work out. But if you, because the devil's agenda of what it all is everywhere, and that because it's everywhere and it's talked about so much, and therefore it needs to be talked about even more in the church or in the family, because the most that's talked about is what it's going to be, and what you hear is what it's going to be. So just knowing that that's God's design, but also saying that God is using these things for a better pathway to what you really want, not what the devil is twisting it and contorting it towards. And that's really just 3 sentences, that if maybe someone just told me that, like, it's a good thing, you're not a bad person for wanting these things, but there's God's way and there's the devil's way. And what's being thrown in your face is the devil's way. But that's not what you really want. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah, definitely. So when you put it that way, what's in your face most of the time is the devil's way, and we don't want his way, we want God's way. So what are the things that you've done to guard your heart? Because we know that Song of Songs chapter 8:4 says, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Okay, so we are naturally growing in what we want in our marriage, in our love, like that's happening. But the Bible tells us not to awaken it until it's time. And then also another Song of Solomon verse is chapter 2, verse 15, that says, catch for us the foxes and the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. The little foxes of sin, those little things that we think, oh, it's not really a big deal, but it really is, because that little sin builds on the next little sin. And pretty soon, I call it the slippery slope, not soap, the slippery slope. Like once you do one thing, it's just, you just keep rolling, because you're allowing sin in and you're giving the devil a foothold and the Bible tells us not to. So what are some of the things that as a guy seeking the Lord and his ways, what are some things that you've done to guard your heart and protect yourself from the temptation?
One thing that helped me a lot, particularly in high school, was that I had a group of about 3 or 4 guys that we would talk about it. And so and the majority of people are talking about it in a completely different way that we were talking about it. So if you're surrounding yourself with people who talk about it like it's not a big deal, or that it's so awesome talking about not God's way, in that talk, and like you're sitting in the conversation talking to these people and you're like man, I'm missing out, like man, like I don't see what's really wrong with this. And so I'm not obviously not saying that you can't be around those people and be a light to those people, because quite frankly, in life, you're going to be around those people most of the time.
Right.
So I'm not saying run away from that. I'm saying that if you need to talk about something, if you need to get real with some people and talk about that, have that. So that really has helped me a lot. And also, anytime that I'm going to think about something or make a decision, it's going to be about what the word says. So, I mean, obviously, just like, I don't know if some people know that, like, the Bible, like, it talks about this. Like, I don't think people, like, some people really understand that.
Right.
So just my 2 things would just be that, have those, maybe those few guys that or girls that you can talk about it, and also obviously see what the word says about it.
Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on social media?
All those Main Street pictures.
Girls on social media, not just the selfie world. Like that's always been a big rule in my house. Like from the minute my girls had a camera in their hands, I don't remember how old. I guess Will wasn't taking any pictures. Will he is like got his nose in a book all the time. He just wants to get through school and be done. But it's girls. And my first rule was always no selfies. Like this is not about us. Like we are living to serve others, to love like Jesus, things like that. So rarely will you find a picture of one person unless I was taking it for a certain reason. So I don't want your opinion on selfies. I want your opinion on when girls post pictures on vacation or, all their beach pictures, stuff like that. How does that affect a guy? Not just necessarily you, but as you have been around guys in general, how does it affect you? Because I will say, I was reading an article one time where I think they put like brain analyzers on these men's heads as they were out on the beach. I don't know really what that looked like, but they were, and so what they were doing were, they were following the brain activity. That's what it was. The brain activity of these men as they showed them different pictures. That's what it was. So that it was definitely a controlled setting.
Yeah.
But they showed them pictures of different things. And so like, there was a picture of a girl in a one-piece bathing suit, and the thoughts were more of a warm thought, where it was more like a nurturing, protective thought. And then another man was shown a picture of a girl in a bikini, and then his thought went to just like no activity, like just as if he had seen a hammer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of strange because maybe that one particular man had started to dissociate. Is that a word? Dissociate?
Yeah.
Disassociate any kind of emotion when he saw a girl in a bikini, because he had to. I don't know. It was just very interesting.
Yeah,
So
I've always heard that the same part of the brain that lights up when they see the bikinis is the same part that, like, when you're in the workshop with all the tools and like hammers and stuff, because of
really,
because of the but we've talked about this before, like the whatever lights up in guys' brains about tools and like using the tools and like using them, like, and that's what lights up like using girls as a tool. Like it's the same. I know I'm not saying it right,
pleasure
but
in a certain
like
way.
it's because guys, like, they're meant to go out in the workshop and
Build
just
things
like
and do things
Yeah.
and all that. But then you also I'm thinking of that Kenny Chesney song, Summertime. Boys' hearts still skip a beat when them girls shimmy off them old cutoffs. Do you remember? Have you heard that verse?
I've absolutely heard that verse.
Yeah. So you have all these sides, all these things, and we know there are tons of songs written about all the whole spectrum of guys and girls and things they do and all that kind of stuff. So from a guy's perspective, can you tell the girls, is it, I don't know, is it just hard to be a guy that's following the Lord when you see all these pictures on your phone?
Yes and yes and no, but I would think it's inaccurate when some guys are like, when it's, well, I mean, it's every time I look at my phone, it's just all in my face, and like I can't do anything. I can't even get on Instagram. I can't even get on TikTok. Well, TikTok's an algorithm. So I mean, if that pops up on your phone and you scroll past it, it's not going to pop up again. Like, but honestly, I get most of my sermon pieces from TikTok, to be honest, but that's another thing. But also who you follow on Instagram. So if this girl is posting things that are tempting you, that is in your face, that all you gotta do is unfollow her. So I mean, I think it's dramatic when, I mean, yes, it's in your face, but you can control it, I would say. But as far as kind of what we were talking about earlier in the question, is that as far as bikini pictures or any sort of bathing suit pictures, I mean, how do I put this? Are they wrong in and of itself? No, I don't think so. So like of course, it depends on the angle and what kind of bathing suit you're wearing and like how zoomed in the picture is. But I mean, you can get in the ins and outs of it. But if it's in your face and that's all you can look at, then that's different than if there's a different level of, just because you're wearing a bikini does not mean it's a bad picture. You know what I'm saying? I would say that. So, like, because there are some pictures that I don't have any sort of problem with, and there are other pictures where I do, and that it tempts me, and that it's sad, but, and also like I would kind of view it as, it's it's not bad for a guy to be attracted to a girl in a bikini. Like that's not a bad thing at all.
Right.
But like,
That's normal.
yeah, exactly. But you're some when obviously that thing is safe for marriage, and that you're trying to put that out there for me to compromise my relationship with my wife one day, like that's when I don't think that's okay at all.
And that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot, the culture has become like, I'm posting my bathing suit picture. I mean, I've seen so many girls just post a picture of themselves in their bikini probably
laid
maybe
out on the beach, like not even just sitting there, just like,
no, I mean they're standing there posing.
Yeah.
You know, like here's my bikini picture. And I don't think they understand that it's like you were talking about gossiping. You know, they don't know that they don't need to do that. And that it does not protect their future husband. Am I saying that right? I
Yeah.
mean, because I've always told my girls, and we might be getting ahead of the questions,
It's okay.
but I've always told them, you know, it's Proverbs 31:10 that talks about how a godly woman honors, yes, brings good and not harm to her husband all the days of her life. And so when she's posting these pictures, she's only thinking about what she can get, like the praise and the likes or whatever she can get. She's not thinking about what her future husband is going to think about putting her body out there for the whole world to see, when really our bodies are meant to be a gift for each other. So when you see something like that, do you would that kind of knock a girl out of the running, so to speak? I mean, if you see like I don't know, what are your thoughts about a girl that would post stuff like that?
I mean, I guess in a nutshell, it would just be depends, because not every girl is gonna be perfect. Not every girl is gonna, I mean, gonna do everything right. So I mean, I don't say it would knock her out of the running, but I mean, just because, I mean, just in that sense, that like I thought I was gonna go to college and find the I was gonna be the absolute perfect girl, because there's so many girls at college. Like one's got to be like what I think is great, but then realize like no girl's gonna be perfect. But anyway, what I kind of view is if it's a lot of those type of pictures where it's I'm just trying to get really sexual attention from guys, and that's about it. And you can tell it's like every other picture or every picture, that's their intention. But I mean, if it's maybe one or two where girls thinking like, because like they don't know really how guys think. So if it's like one or two on Instagram, I don't necessarily think that's good, but I'm not going to really overthink that. And also, y'all may have heard this before, but the verse that says, I think I forgot what it was, but it says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing." And I heard a sermon piece on that verse, and it said like, it's not he who finds a girl who makes his girl who makes her girlfriend who buys a ring that he proposes to. It's so that if you're a girl and you carry yourself in the spirit of a wife, a good man will find you. But if you carry yourself in the spirit of girlfriend, then guys will play with you. So if you think about he who finds a wife, you think about, if I'm a guy and I find a girl, she's not technically my wife, but you're a wife when you meet that girl. I mean, that girl's a wife when you meet that girl. So if, like I said, if you are carrying yourself in that way, then the Lord will put a godly man in your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good.
It's all about, we dress for where we're going, right?
And that's what I mean. I was
Uh-huh.
thinking, like you said, you have gotten to the point now where you can look at social media and it's depends on the angle, it depends on the bathing suit. Like, but I also know, I mean, not to like, I mean, I'm not exposing you for anything, but I'm just saying, like, I know me and you have had conversations earlier in your teenage years where it was a lot harder because obviously you've grown, like we all grow in our relationship with Christ. And so for you, being on Instagram now is a lot different than when you were on Instagram in high school. And so,
that's true.
Yeah. And so that's why I think I mean, the heart behind everything, that's why I mean, the curriculum that we're writing is heart issues for Girl Talk, because it is like, it's just like you just said, it's why they're posting it. You can tell usually why they're posting it by the way they're standing, by how many posts they're making, like all of that stuff. But I think in context to just like you're in a different place than someone else might be when a guy's looking at Instagram. And I think for girls, for us to know, and like you just made the comment that girls don't know how guys think just because we personally don't, like we literally don't know how you think because we aren't you.
We weren't made like you.
Yeah, but all of that to say, like you have gotten to the point, but there has been points where it was harder to be on Instagram. And I think all of that just goes into like it explains why any type of bathing suit picture is not always your best choice, because you don't know where a guy is when he looks at your Instagram. And to put, like what you said, to put him in jeopardy for his future wife and put him in jeopardy for his future marriage is not, it's not holding each other accountable and like holding our weight to how we are accountable for what our actions cause other people to do, and just all of that. And so I think, I mean, I keep thinking about too, I mean, there's one reason why you don't, I mean, alcohol is a whole different thing, but if you walked up to an alcoholic, you wouldn't just have alcohol right in front of their face.
Offer them a drink.
And like, we're not calling boys alcoholics when it comes to girls, but I mean, if you look at statistics, girls are just as bad too. We are all made, just like we've all been talking about, like
we're made to reproduce.
Yeah, like we are literally made with sexual drive in us, because that's what God literally put Adam and Eve together. That's the first thing they did.
Be fruitful and multiply.
They didn't even have clothes on. So what are they going to do? Like there's, you know, it's just them two without clothes on in the garden, and that's how we are made. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong or unbiblical about the union of two, man and wife.
And the attraction,
all of that, which is why putting a picture with absolutely almost no clothes on, like you might as well just put a picture of you with a no clothes on, and you have absolutely no clue who's going to see it, how they're going to react to it, what they're going to think of you and your body, what they're going to think. Like, I mean, and just like, okay, this is what I was saying. You have no clue. Walk up to an alcoholic, offer them a drink. You don't know if they're going to take it. You don't know if they're alcoholic. You're just being nice. Here's a drink. And then that one drink, even if they're not an alcoholic, like sets them out. They're alcoholic for the rest of their life because of that one drink. And so just like you post one bathing suit picture, you have no clue how one guy is going to react to it. Man cheats on his wife because, I mean, and that's like so heavy. I'm not trying to like put that much weight on a picture that we post, but it's a possibility.
It's the little
it's
fox
so much
that spoils the vine.
Yeah, and that
we're talking about.
That's the giving the enemy a foothold. Like the enemy is waiting for something like that. Like he's waiting for an innocent thing that we post for him to use it, because that's culture today. Like that's what everybody has. Social media, everybody's posting, everybody, like we're all in this together, and the enemy knows exactly what he can use. And so like, yeah, it's, I mean, some people are probably going to watch this and be like, you're being way too serious. It's a picture on Instagram. But the enemy literally can use so much. And that's why, I mean, we are called to such a high standard, because the enemy is prowling around like a roaring lion. Like he's waiting to devour us. And why give him anything? And I mean, I know you think that, you know, that, like we've talked about that so many times, and you have lived your life where that it's not, you're not following all the bathing suit. Like, I mean, and I know you just like you said, like you've unfollowed girls because of it. You're not just looking at everyone's TikToks. You're not looking for it. You're not following all those accounts. You're not going to those websites. Like you're not making your phone, which you made such a good point. Like girls are not the only party that are responsible for this, because guys have just as much control over what they click on and what they follow and what they allow their phone to come into. And there's blocks, and there's so many things, is what we like have been talking about. There's so many things. So definitely whoever's watching this, we're not like, you're terrible because you posted a bathing suit picture, because guys have just as much responsibility, not to necessarily look away, but to, you know, set up what they need. Because just like Beau, you said, like now it's not a problem, but it could have been, or someone else watching might be like, no, it's really hard. I can't look away. Like I click on it and I want to find more, and I want to get like, and it just, you never know what hole you're putting that first little like, oh, what is this? And then it just opens up everything.
Right. And so for the younger guys, or maybe the guys who haven't had somebody praying for them their whole life, or, just people that are more apt to the struggles. I mean, it's the same with any other kind of struggle. We are called to be our brother's keeper. And so, it's just really encouraging, our part, I think, is just encouraging girls to be mindful, to be mindful of how they're affecting other people. Just like with guys, you watch out for each other, and help each other. So,
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. This is a little bit more to the point. So, do all these thoughts and conversations and choices create more of a burden of how your actions and choices affect your marriage, or a joy that you can have in building a life towards your marriage?
I wouldn't. It's definitely tougher in a way, of meaning that it's going against the crowd and it's going against your natural fleshly desires. So obviously we know all about the struggle of temptation, but it's a lot more it's a lot more peaceful, meaning that like um yes, in that moment kind of everything in your flesh is going toward that, what that wants, but on the other side is way more peaceful, in that I would rather go through so many hardships. It's the Christian life, it's as a whole, it's not like, of course, not everything's gonna be good, but it's gonna be really tough. But I would much rather be peaceful and knowing that I'm on the right track and it be tough, rather than quote unquote living the easy life, but you're never at peace, you're never at rest. So it's really not easier. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of how I view that.
Yeah. So it's because you are building, you're looking forward to something. Another thing, I know we just talked about all the bathing suit things, and that's just on social media. But in your daily life, in a girl's daily life, when you are getting to know people around you, do you take into consideration how a girl dresses day in and day out, when you're considering if that's someone you want to get to know even more?
I would say yes. But it's very how do I put this? It's maybe this is just because I've just, like Amy said earlier, grown in my faith since I was, obviously, when all of the desires came at like 13. I mean, that was 6 years ago. But I feel like I have much more of a, I mean, I've been doing it for 6 years, much more of a control of it now. So I don't really think about it as much. But but it'll definitely click in my mind, she knew exactly what she was doing when she put that on. And that's just really like putting yourself out there in any way, whether it be just like, because you can tell when a person walks into a room and they want the attention all on themselves, rather than that's the way they talk, the way they dress, and whether it could be, and that's just, again, a sign of insecurity and lack of identity in Christ, and it all kind of circles together for me. um but one thing that I would that would, if girls kept this in mind, it would really kind of help them, would be like, yes, if wearing those things and it's really out in the open, you're I can almost guarantee you're going to get attention from guys, but it's not the attention you want. It's not the attention from the guy that you want to marry. It's not the attention that you're getting is the guy who's gonna play with you and use you for what he wants. Um, so yeah, that's the way I think about it, as far as like a girl dresses from day to day.
Well, first, I want to know, like, I mean, you're not necessarily considering asking anyone out on a formal date right now because of school and what you said you're focused on. Like, I know it's not your biggest focus to be asking out a girl in pursuit of marriage, but like, what I think it's important for girls to know how much time, like, if you did find someone that you know is potentially someone you want to pursue in marriage, like, that's the only reason you're going to ask a girl out for a date. So, how much time goes into that? Like, how much time do you spend in praying for that, seeking the Lord's direction, like before you would ask a girl out? Like, what are your prayers, and just, you know what I'm saying, like, how much time do you spend in before you would ask a girl out on like an actual date?
Um, what I like to do, I mean, it was as far as, I don't know, I wouldn't, it's really, I guess it depends on the time frame, but of as far as like X amount of time before to think about it and pray about it, depends on the situation. But I mean, it's definitely not out on a whim. Kind of the steps that I like to do is obviously praying about it, think about like, I mean, not overthinking every little action because you're asking someone out on a date to get to know them.
Right.
Like it's, you don't know everything about this person. I mean, you may get around this person and it's just y'all two, and you may just be like, not what I was expecting. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's why
Yeah.
you do it. But obviously praying about it and whether or not being around them in really social settings, whether like I obviously enjoy it and this, that, and the other, but also asking as far as in college goes, like most of the girls that you're talking to, you didn't know them for the first 18 years of your life,
Mm-hmm.
but you know some of your buddies who went to high school with them. So, I mean, if a girl is from Nashville, Atlanta, you may want to ask your buddies, hey, like, what was this girl like in high school? I'm not saying that, and if he's like, well, I mean, she was doing this, whatever it could be, and like you don't align with that at all, like that's something to consider. I'm not saying that you can't change coming into college because a lot of people do change for better or worse coming into college. And that's definitely something to consider because if you live one way for whether it be through middle school and high school or just high school, like that's a lot of years to break a habit or break a way of living.
Right.
That's not just going to turn around as for me, like just through freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, I mean, that's important to like maybe ask around and also just paying attention to all the things that we've talked about so far.
With all that to say, like, what are your thoughts on date parties and dances and like all the college stuff? Like, we're definitely, like, you're in college world, so like, what do you see the differences in just date parties, dances, game day dates, like all those girls that you're just kind of, we talked about earlier, that's just kind of like a casual, like you just ask girls, you know, and it's just kind of not a big deal. But what are your thoughts on the differences between that opposed to asking a girl out and just the intentions that it takes? Like, do you think about all of these things before you even ask a girl out for a date party, or is it more just you just kind of ask whoever and just see, and it's not a big deal because you're not like pursuing them?
I mean, sometimes like you may, I mean, you may talk to a person just for, you may have met the person and talked to him at a party for 10, 15 minutes. And wow, it was a great conversation. I'll ask her to a date party. But most of the time, it's like, you know, this person, you've kind of been around them. And the similarities is that when you're asking someone to a date party or whether something like that, it's you obviously interested in being around this person for extended amounts of time. And
Yeah.
their worth, um, I mean, you chose them. You chose to ask them over all the other girls you could ask. So in that sense, it's similar to asking somebody on a date or potentially even dating someone.
Yeah.
But the difference is kind of like we talked about earlier, like everyone asks to date to a date party, but everyone doesn't ask somebody out to go on a date
Yeah.
to go eat somewhere or to and pay for their meal and pick them up and spend like go out of their way to spend this allotted time.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's different commitments, but the interests are definitely the same. I would just say that asking somebody out on a date would just really exemplify those interests. You see what I'm saying? As far as
Yes.
similarities and differences.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I just was interested in that question just because I want girls to hear it and know that a guy like you, who every girl wants to date and everyone wants your attention, like just all the things, how they, like, even if they live in a mindset of like, well, I mean, I'm not looking to get married, like blah blah, all this stuff, like they're not going to get asked out by a good guy that they want to marry eventually, even to a dance, date, party, whatever, if they're just, because you're not, like what you just said, like you're not going to ask some crazy wild girl who's looking for a good time and nothing else, and who's just going to be, I mean, fly, like whatever, flinging herself at you all night long. Like you're not going to ask that girl, you're going to hear about it and be like, yeah, that's not the kind of girl that I want to be hanging on me all night long. Like, and so I think it's important for girls to know that even if it is like something casual, like a dance for a date party, like your actions and lifestyle and all the choices that you make, like it matters too. Like, and I mean, just like you've talked about already and what we've always said, like who you are is going to attract the person that you are going to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've talked about being a guy and temptation and what people were created for, and you know, starting families and all that. And so you know, we have the language of like, oh yeah, sometimes you got to spice it up and sometimes you got to do this and that, and but then at the same time we've also heard, let's keep the fire in the fireplace. That's kind of the phrase that we've started, keeping the fire in the fireplace. What does that mean to you? Like, how would you explain that? Have you heard that before?
I definitely have. It's just like, when the fire gets out of the fireplace, I mean the whole house burns down. But when you keep it in the fireplace, use it to cook, use it to for warmth, all that, and it's good. So I guess that's the analogy, but um it's taken on a whole new meaning since coming to college. I mean, going from Trinity in Montgomery, you're in a private Christian school and 60 people are in your grade. And you just kind of think that, of course, it's thrown at you, don't have sex before marriage. And that's just kind of about it as far as that conversation goes. Like, you just kind of think that it's just not around. And then you get to Auburn, which really in high school, it was probably more around than I thought, but you get to Auburn and it's like you're in the extreme minority if you're a virgin and you're in college, and it's very like awakening, like it's real, like this is actually like a thing. And it's I would say it's just really like who you hang around that will determine, like, because if you're hanging around guys who talk about it like it's every other thing, just something normal they do with their girlfriend or with a girl, it's you start to think that it's normal and you start to think that I'm missing out. And but obviously if you surround yourself with those people who realize that it's not the way, then that helps a lot.
Show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That kind of thing. You've got to surround yourself with the people that have the same mindset and values as you do. Yeah. Yep. Because when you put the dye in the water, when you put the little drip of dye in the water, it changes the water.
Yeah.
And we can be like that too if we don't guard our heart. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you want to be in the majority of everybody, guys, girls, whatever, like if you want to be in the majority of everybody that's having sex, then you're going to be in the majority of everyone who gets divorced when they're older. Like it's just, and I mean, that's not a like definite fact, but it is like most of the time, if you look at the divorce rates and all the statistics as we've like already talked about, it all comes from choices that were made before marriage that you bring into marriage, and it just weighs your marriage down, and it makes it almost impossible to overcome. And it's obviously never impossible with God. Like he is such a redeemer in all things. But I mean, that's why we're talking about this. That's why we have 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds, like maybe not using all of the words that we need to use with them, but just the beginning of it that now, because if you can stop, there's a girl, what was the story? It was it jail? There was a ministry. I think it was either abortion or jail, but it was something a women's ministry. And I was like, oh man, that sounds like amazing. I can't believe you get to do that. And then the lady said to me that if Girl Talk keeps going, like what we're doing is going to put her ministry out of business. And if you think about that, like that's what we're here. Like we are trying to stop the divorce rate. We're trying to just stop the premarital sex. Like we're trying to stop if sex before marriage could stop, abortion would not be an issue. Like it would be, there's medical things, all of that just, but I mean, the social issue of just the way that God had it set up, if we just follow the Bible, if you just do what you're supposed to do, then God has it, like perfectly planned the way. And when we follow him, we seek him first, like we give him everything. When we align our lives with the Holy Spirit and like let him walk us through everything, like everything that you've said, Beau, and just everything that we've talked about, like it is hard, just like you said, like it's hard, but it's only going to be harder if you don't walk that narrow path that we were created to live in.
Yeah, it's just you choose your hard, when you choose your hard now or you choose your hard later.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about your thoughts on relationships when you were in middle school versus your thoughts on relationships now, and that's changed as you've grown. So what's the most important thing that your parents taught you about relationships?
Most important thing. Oh man. I would probably say that I don't know if they necessarily taught me this, but I would always ask my mom for any sort of girl advice. And through that, she told me that she says, Beau, you're thinking very literally like a man would, like you are thinking totally different than what this girl is thinking. And that's just obviously that's why communication it's the root of all success in I think relationships, but it's that you think so girls and guys think very differently. That's just the bottom line. They do.
Yeah, that's good.
And that influenced you probably the most in trying to figure out how to communicate with girls, and that knowing that you need to communicate in certain ways and about certain things and depending on the girl. So yeah.
What do you think influenced you the most growing up?
I'd say probably my parents, just because my dad, he has taught me so much without even speaking a word. He can just teach me so many things. Just how he carries himself, how he speaks to how he just responds, like actually and verbally in different situations, like the confidence that he displays, the leadership in our family. And then my mom is just like the more of like practical, like what do I do in the situation? Like you always call your mom, like she always has the answer. You know what I'm saying? So I would say my parents.
That's good.
Good. Well, as it should be.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, we do Girl Talk, and I mean, when it all comes back down to it, we really are, we want to equip moms to know that, and dads, that they have everything they need to be what their kids need. And that really is, I mean, Girl Talk's all about girls, but it's really about equipping parents to be there, because that really is like, that is your biggest influence, and it should be. And so, yeah, it's perfect ending, perfect wrap up to just all that we want girls to know and moms to know. And so.
But for the girls that don't have the mom to speak into their life, or the dad to speak into their life, that's also why we're doing this, and why you being here today was definitely so important, so that girls who don't have that dad telling them, hey, this is what guys are thinking, they can hear it from a guy's point of view. So thank you for sharing your time with us and and your heart. And for the guys that don't have a dad to speak into their life, or someone around them to encourage them in the Lord's ways, is there an action item that you can give them? I know that's a really broad question, but like one piece of advice that you would give to a young guy, maybe in high school, who feels like there's something better than what he's currently experiencing or living or whatever. I don't know. Do you see where I'm going?
Mhm.
Something that you would encourage them in? I mean, there's the whole blanket statement, follow the Lord, but what does that look like to a high school guy?
As far as for guys who grew up maybe without a father figure due to whatever reason, my mind, that question immediately went to what you can do and kind of like replace. But to be honest, like there's no replacing it. It's a broken world. Like there's no replacing a father figure. There's no, I mean, there's not that in heaven. It's how do I put this? It's like there's there's no thing that you could do that would replace that void that is filled. So what I would encourage them with is that if one person gets saved because of you telling them story about how you didn't grow up with a dad, it's all going to be worth it. So basically what I'm saying is that the Lord is using that to do so much more. And yes, and your heavenly Father is going to be with you every single step of the way. And people are going to come into your life to help you. You're not going to be alone. But also just know that the Lord is going to do so much more through that than your pain, than what you can just see like your pain now of missing that father figure.
Mhm.
But as far as maybe a high school guy who is, I guess, questioning whether or not to go all in or kind of having doubts of which way to go, or things are kind of getting real and you got to make a decision about what your life's going to be, is that it's it's not going to be easy to follow the Lord, but like I said earlier, it's always going to give you more peace, and you're always going to be able to walk confidently, rather than when you lay in bed at night and you're following all these different desires, and you're you spin out and you had this high and then you come back down and you feel terrible. It's always going to leave you in more of a hole than you were before. No matter what the Lord says, and no matter what the world the world says, it's always just gonna the devil's a liar and he's nothing but a liar. That's the gist of it.
That's good. So choose the hard. Choose the
Yes.
hard, because most of the time the hard thing leads to the peaceful thing. Okay, sorry. That wasn't my last question, but I have one more really good question. It's my last question. Because what you said earlier about the wife of noble character who can find, and if you find a good wife, then it's a gift and it's a treasure. So what would you say to a girl from a guy's perspective, of how, I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, what is a piece of advice that you would give a girl with the mindset of getting married one day? The girl who just wants to get married and have her family, like from a guy's point of view, what's the one piece of advice you would give her?
Yeah. Like,
of living her life now.
what do you hope is being said to your wife right now?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What do you hope is being said to your wife right now?
What do I hope? I would say that if a girl told me that what she wants to do, like, because such a common question is like, oh, what's your major? Like, oh, what do you want to do with that? That's what everyone asks in college. And I haven't heard a girl once say that. I mean, yeah, I'm getting a degree, and if I have to get a job, I will, just if I need support in that way. But like, I just want to be a mom. I'd be honest, I haven't heard a girl say that. And to me, if a girl told me that, like I would love it, just because I mean somebody's got to raise my kids, like at least while I'm at work.
Right.
Somebody's got to do it. Like
Uh-huh.
I won't pay for daycare. Like that may feel like it's, I mean, anyway, but it's more practical than what we're talking about. Um, but it's just like obviously that's very attractive to a guy, is that a girl is thinking about how that she wants to raise that her husband's kids in the best way possible.
Mhm.
That is, and what's sad about today's society is somehow that's looked down upon.
Right.
Like just, and of course that's like, oh, well, you're not making any money, and all the guy is like, since when is money a factor of importance? It's not. That's just the world that tells us that. And is the world tells us that just because women are supposed to be led and not leaders in marriage, that somehow that's worse, or somehow that's not as important. And we're both equally as important, but that doesn't mean that we're good at the same things. You know what I'm saying? That's like saying that, like, I don't know, that you, I mean, you can't have a football team without a leader and a coach, and you can't, like, it's saying that maybe the players are more important than the coach, or the coach more important than the players. Like it's a team effort. You know what I'm saying? Just because one person has a certain role doesn't mean that make them better than the other.
Right. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. And I think that gets clouded when you have I think it's just misunderstood, not necessarily clouded, but it's misunderstood because usually we're drawn to people that are a little opposite of us because we know we're weak. Well, it's not a conscious thing, like, but we are weak in one area and we love that they're strong in a certain area. But what the enemy does in marriage is he brings you together. Well, the enemy doesn't bring you together. Sometimes in the world, the enemy brings you together. But but in marriage, a husband and wife come together, and those differences, if they're walking in their flesh, they start conflicting. And that's when you have to walk in the spirit and lay down, sacrifice your desire. And so that's where the gospel gets played out in marriage. But you're right. We kind of got off the subject as far as that question. But that's good, that for the girl to know that her role, like, women were created to be mothers. And so if all we do is grow up and get a degree and go work somewhere, who's going to be the mother? That's the most important thing, because the guy was created to protect and provide, and the mother was created to nurture. So it's good.
Yeah. Good job. You passed.
Well, thanks again for talking with us today, giving us so much of your time. We appreciate it.
Well, yeah, I appreciate y'all asking me. It was really an honor. But I really enjoyed it, and thank y'all for having me. That was great.
Thank you.
We'll probably do it again.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have lots of requests after the video post.
Right.
Like, wait, what about this?
Yeah, they might send some questions back. So
everybody, we can do a part. This is probably going to be like part 7, part 8, and we can do a part 8 video.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. I'm down for it.